Americans for Prosperity is committed to breaking barriers across the country, and Americans for Prosperity is growing across North Dakota. By calling on lawmakers to reduce taxes, spend less, improve health care, and provide second chances, we can empower all North Dakotans to rise. We're fighting for you. Join us today so we can make North Dakota the best state to live, work, and raise a family. Americans for Prosperity paid for this ad. Zach Raknerud joins me now. Zach, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Zach has been involved in North Dakota politics for a while. He's been involved in local leadership in his local legislative district for the North Dakota Democrats. He ran for the legislature in the past. In the 2018 cycle, ran for the State House of Representatives, was ultimately unsuccessful, but now is launching a campaign for the U.S. House of Representatives for Congress. So, Zach, tell us about that. What made you decide you wanted to jump into the congressional race?
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I've been involved with the Dem MPL for better part of 5 years now, and being involved with them, we kind of learned that the convention was coming to Minot, and I thought that was really awesome. The Dem MPL really recognized that some folks in the west side of the state were kind of feeling left behind a little bit.
Sure.
Like a lot of the events were happening in Fargo and Grand Forks and over on the east side. And so they brought the convention over to Minot. And
I'm trying to remember the last time the Democrats, because I live in I am a fellow Minot resident, so I'm trying to remember the last time the Democrats were in Minot, because I know the NDGOP does kind of a cycle where they do Minot, Bismarck, Fargo, Grand Forks, like they kind of go to the big four. And honestly, I wish the Republicans would go like go to Williston, go to Dickinson, hold it there sometime. But anyway, not my
I agree.
But when were the last time Democrats were in Minot? I'm trying to think.
I'm actually not even aware of any time they were. It's been a hot minute at least.
Yeah.
But it's really awesome that they are deciding to come here this year. So when I heard that news, it really kind of started to get me thinking on it. And as you know, nobody else has jumped into this race yet. And so as time went on and I considered it further, I kind of realized that, the policy positions that I'm passionate about don't get their voice a lot, and especially around these parts. And so I wanted to jump in and give them their voice. And so I entered the race, and here we are.
Well, let's give them their voice right now. Tell us what some of those policy positions are. If you were elected to the United States Congress and were sent there by North Dakotans, what's your priorities?
Sure. So I do have a strong belief that over the last half century, Congress has really left behind the priorities of working people. One of the things I point to was the drafting of the Powell memo. Is in the mid-'70s. It was basically representatives of large multinational corporations getting together and saying that at this point we are going to unashamedly and aggressively pursue public power. And they did just that. And since that point, big money has really
what was the Powell? Let's slow down, because not all our listeners may understand what the Powell memo is. Tell us what that is.
Sure. So yeah, it was basically just the heads of large corporations in the United States were basically not feeling kind of in the same way that some of their needs weren't being met. And so they said it's time that we stop tiptoeing around public policy, and we need to aggressively pursue power and pursue influence. And they've taken that stance. And since that has happened, corporations and lobbyists and all that stuff have really gained a lot of power, and as a result, the balance has shifted the other way. And now it's their priorities that are coming number one, rather than working people. And you've seen it in the policy that Congress has kind of focused on the better part of the last half century.
I know. Let's debate that a little bit, because I know, and I mean, obviously, I'm coming at this from the perspective of a conservative, so I feel a little differently about this, but Like I look at labor unions, for instance. I mean, labor unions have a ton of political clout. They spend a ton of political money. And in fact, up until the recent Janus decision, in a lot of places in the country, they were able to pass laws where if you worked in certain professions, you didn't even get a choice on whether or not you paid dues to the union. So, I mean, they have a lot of political power too. And I guess I'm looking at this like whether you're a board member for a corporation or an executive or a shareholder in a corporation, or you're an electrician who's a member of the IBEW, shouldn't you both have clout in the political process? I mean, the great thing about the American system of government is that it's participatory. And I realize people, it's corporations will, and I realize this drives a lot of people nuts when I say this, but corporations are people insofar as they're made up of people, right? Corporations represent people who work for corporations, people who own stocks in corporations, people who are executives in corporations. Shouldn't they have a say in politics too?
They should have a say, but I think you look at the balance, and when you look at the numbers today, unions do have some power in still, but the spending is 10-1, dang near. It is not even close today.
Is it?
And so
I'm not sure that's true.
Very lopsided.
Is it?
Today.
Okay. Because I remember once upon a time the labor
you can
union
fact
by
check
far.
it. You can fact check it, but I'm pretty confident it's there's a disparity.
I guess it depends on how.
It might not be 10-1. 10-1 might be a little bit.
Well, it may be differences in how I know at one point, like in terms of donations to campaigns, labor unions were like I remember there used to be like a top 10 list, and this is several years ago now, and a lot of things have happened. We had the Citizens United ruling, right. The way in which we campaign, it's not all just giving money to candidates now. There's all these independent groups or whatever, right. But unions used to be like the top like 9 out of the top 10 political givers in the country. Right. Before
one thing I do want to say quick is that I think a couple terms that I use personally is I do believe in capitalism and markets and all that. There's two types of capitalism, and I think we've shifted from one to the other in a way that's been detrimental. It used to be kind of back in the 70s and before something called stakeholder capitalism that I see, which is stakeholders are everybody, the general public, the environment, the employees, the shareholders, everybody. And then we shifted really to a pretty predominant shareholder capitalism where it's just those who own direct shares in the companies that they're really trying to drive the returns for just that group. And so
I'm not sure that started in the 70s. I think if you go back and you read about like John Rockefeller and JP Morgan and some of these guys,
sure.
I mean, they were not.
Well, I mean, it's been a cycle. I mean, we
right.
saw a lot. Like, I strongly believe that today the economy really mirrors the Roaring '20s in a lot of ways. And you look at how the shift of wealth and power has occurred. There's a lot of similarities in how that's occurring. And then when the Great Depression happened and everything kind of fell down, everything kind of went back, and they pulled it back, and they banned corporate expenditures. They did all kinds of programs to kind of re-put the working people in priority. And
so what would you do
since that time?
I mean, to correct the current situation, let's like in terms of real world practical policy, what would you do to address this imbalance you're talking about?
So I think that you look at what the judiciary has done, all that is kind of set, and it'll take a lot of precedent to kind of change all that. But I do think that Congress has a chance to fix this through publicly financing our elections. I would like to see a system where every eligible American, every voting age American, were given a financial stake in our elections, whether it's a voucher of $20, $50, something like that, where they can take that share and only use it as a voucher towards, I'm going to support this candidate for mayor, this candidate for governor, this candidate for president. They can spread it out, and they can help fund the campaign of their choice, because right now campaigns are largely funded not by individual donors, but by special interest PACs and independent expenditures and stuff. And one way that we can turn that around a bit is to give Americans a voice, because if money is speech, then every American deserves a voice in their election.
But a lot of politicking gets done, like you just said, through independent groups. So if you publicly finance campaigns and you say, okay, every American, you have a set amount of money and you could give it to the candidate or candidates of your choice, whatever mechanism or formula we come up for that, what's to stop me and some like-minded individuals from just starting our own group and promote and saying, hey, vote for this candidate, not for that candidate, and running TV ads and Facebook ads and Twitter ads and doing all this stuff?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm not saying to ban the independent expenditures. I'm saying to counterbalance by having both, because right now, like I said, judicial precedent is set. Like, those things aren't going to go away anytime soon. And so if you just give the American people an option to get their voice in there, it kind of counterbalances the whole wave. I don't know.
I feel like the American people have a voice. I mean, online. I mean, President Barack Obama's campaign, I'm obviously not a fan of President Barack Obama, but really sort of was a pioneer in small money donations gathered online. I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm not sure I see the problems the same way that you see the problems.
That's also a campaign for president, Rob. I mean, that's a prominent, you can get a lot of energy and a lot of excitement. I'm talking about fixing like everything from local races to legislative, where it's extremely difficult for somebody to get their voice out there. Somebody like me, I mean, I'll admit it's going to be extremely difficult for me to get fundraising and all that. And I think we need to work towards a system that makes it more open for working people and young people to jump into our elections. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if people are donating to you, yes, that helps, but your ideas and your policies are going to be what people vote for you on.
Yeah, I mean, the problem I have is I like the idea of making it as easy as possible to participate, up to and including voting. I think I want people to participate. I think that's when it thrives. And in a lot of ways, I think we have more participation in American politics than maybe any other time. I mean, it's what social media has enabled in terms of just being able to keep track of keep up on news, keep up on what elected officials are doing. We live in I think we could do a whole podcast just on this. I think we live in a very populist age, and I think there is a lot more contribution from rank and file Americans. I think there's a lot more participation than any other time. What bothers me about yours is that we're going to put like a cap, like if I have more, like I don't know, maybe every American gets $50 or whatever the number is. Well, you're also telling me that I can only spend that much on the candidate of my choice. That seems like a limitation.
I didn't say that. I said that they would get that as an option to spend, and like it's not going to take away their ability to use their personal income.
Okay.
It would still be the same $2,700 limit and all that.
But so basically, you're talking about
we have 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now, and so disposable income.
80% of Americans live in paycheck to paycheck.
Yes, American households. It's not 80; it's about 70 something, but it's near 80.
Do you feel like, because what happens if we just get like what if the Nazi Party puts a candidate in the race? Do they get public funding too?
They don't get public funding. The people get the funding, and they choose how they want to use their stake in the election.
So basically, so everybody would get a minimum. There's a minimum everybody gets, but there's no maximum.
Correct.
Other than what I guess.
The maximum is the law
today. Our current
income.
limitations on maxing out. Okay.
Correct.
Well, I mean, I guess that's an idea. Boy, I think you're gonna have. I think you're gonna have a problem because I mean, there are a lot of very fringy, very nutty candidates who are gonna jump in, and you're gonna end up funding them.
Yeah, but are there enough fringy and nutty people to really give them the power compared to if everybody has?
Well, then isn't that an argument? Like
who represent.
Isn't that an argument? I mean, candidates who jump in and just can't do a lot of fundraising. Can't you just argue, well, they're not mainstream enough, or they're not winning over enough support to raise any money?
Not in today's world. I mean, you look at the struggling of the American people, like I said, disposable income for a lot of families is they're not going to spend their hard-earned money trying to
but everybody's got smartphones now.
Elected.
I mean, everybody's got smartphones now. I mean, is it really that big of a problem where they don't have $50 to give to a candidate?
Smartphones aren't money, though. I mean, and it's not.
Well, they cost $1,000. They cost $1,000 to get a smartphone. $600, $700, $800.
Yeah, but look at the percent of
month.
Americans who have a $1,000 smartphone. It's less than 15%. I mean,
is it?
That's a very common argument, but it's not.
But it's several hundred. But it's still like $100 a month. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm looking at the way Americans are living, and there are real problems. I mean, student loan debt's a real problem. The fact that Americans don't save is a real problem. But I'm also seeing a level of prosperity that I'm not sure is squaring with. It does not, as we say in baseball, I'm not sure it's passing the eye test because I'm looking out and I'm just seeing something that's different. But okay, so campaign finance reform. What else? What else are your priorities if you get sent to Congress?
Sure. So healthcare is a big one for me, and we're spending twice as much per capita as every single one of our 32 peer nations. And I know you and I are not going to agree on this issue, but I think that those expenditures, it's not just hurting the American families. It really is. It's also really hurting our business community. Warren Buffett refers to healthcare costs as the tapeworm of American competitiveness, and he endorses a single-payer model.
I'm not surprised that a billionaire businessman wants to unload healthcare costs on the taxpayers. That doesn't surprise me at all. He would. I think he would really love. I think he'd really love if he forced me and you to pay the healthcare costs for his employees. I think that would be great for Warren Buffett's bottom line.
It's everybody paying into the single payer system, all the healthy and all the sick into one single risk pool. And that model, and you talk about the scientific model, 32 developed nations for dang near a century deploying that model, and it's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. You can point to issues in all kinds of different of the 32 countries. But when you look at the issues that America faces, it really pales in comparison. There is 500,000 Americans going bankrupt every year, 32,000 to 45,000 Americans dying every year because they don't go to a doctor when they get sick, and then when they finally go to the doctor, it's too late. Those things shouldn't be happening in the wealthiest nation on earth. That's nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, but it happens other places too. I mean, there's people who die in the United Kingdom waiting to get access to care. I mean, I mean, there's people who flee the United Kingdom. I mean, look at medical tourism. I mean, there's a cottage industry in places like Costa Rica of people who can afford to opt out of nationalized healthcare systems in places like Canada, places like Great Britain. You know, the wealthy can go somewhere else and can afford to take a trip to get their surgery in Costa Rica and get it faster than they could in their home systems. I mean, that's a real thing. A lot of people come to the United States of America.
Every single healthcare system, Rob, is going to ration. That is just the reality.
Yeah.
Here in America, we ration based on a wallet biopsy. Do you have insurance? No. Well, you're probably not coming.
I would rather
Are you underinsured and can't afford?
Yeah, because you're right.
No,
every system is going to ration. I would rather the rationing be that I can always buy all the health care that I want or need, knowing that I may not always be able to afford it all, as opposed to some bureaucrat deciding what sort of health care I get or the amount of health care that I get. I would prefer that.
Medicare is not bureaucracy, though. That's
Medicare is
the bureaucracy in the private. The private health insurance has way more bureaucracy.
Are you a Medicare for all person?
I'm for expanding Medicare to all Americans. Yes.
Okay. So you realize the financial problems that Medicare faces today, right?
I'm aware, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the baby boomer generation aging. The system is getting encumbered by, the large generation there paying out benefits right now. And I think the best way that we protect it is that we make it universal, we expand it, we bring all the healthy and all the sick into the same risk pool. And as that shows around every single other country on earth, the savings is significant. Half the cost per capita. It's not even close.
Yeah. Well, I'm just not sure, Zach. I don't know that you and I are going to find common ground on that one today. And
I didn't expect us to. It's good to have that discussion.
I do agree that the costs are out of control, but I don't know. I look at it as I think there's other ways we could do to bring market forces in. I mean, you say you believe in the marketplace. I think there's other ways we could use market forces to curb some of those expenses.
Yeah, but healthcare is the incentive structure of healthcare is completely different. It is a human need. No matter what, you need healthcare. If you get in a car accident, you need healthcare.
Sure, absolutely.
And this is not something that should be up to the markets in that sense.
But most of us
are not. And I'm not saying that. I want to clarify real quick. I'm not saying that private health insurance should be abolished by any means, but I am saying that there should be a single payer risk pool that guarantees coverage to Americans, a baseline coverage. And if we want to talk about private health insurance that either in my ideal, it would provide supplemental care like private rooms in hospitals like Australia's model.
So if you're rich, you can opt out of you don't have to be in the same hospital with all the peasants.
Well, I mean, you got to look. Like if you get the need of healthcare and you go to the doctor and you get the care you need, that's
because what I'm worried the situation is going to be a government hospital in my community and all the rich people are going to be able to still afford to go to Mayo. I mean, right now my family's not rich, but I have family members who have had extreme medical situations and have gone to Mayo to get care. They can afford that now. I'm not sure in your system we'd be able to. I feel like that sort of thing would be out of because the rank and file people are all in the public system, that sort of thing is going to be out of reach, except for the very wealthy.
Well, that's the exact same thing you were saying about the other systems, though. I mean, if everybody gets the health care that they need, at the end of the day, if somebody is staying in a private room versus versus being in a bed and a curtain, like if I get the health care I need, I don't care about being in a private room and all that.
Let me ask you what you think of this. I think the problem is that most Americans are not the customer for their insurance policy, because most of us, almost all of us, get insurance most of us get insurance through an employer. I get my insurance through an employer,
And that's making less and less sense.
Right. I'm not involved at all in crafting the policy and deciding. I mean, I have coverage for stuff that I'm never going to use, like acupuncture. Like I'm not ever going to go to an acupuncturist. I don't believe in it. I don't need coverage for it. Why do I have it? I think that's
Sure.
the problem is I'm not directly the customer for my health insurance. Instead, my employer provides it, or for the other second largest health insurance provider in the country is the government. And because there's that disconnect, when it comes to my auto insurance, I shop around. It's very competitive. I get very good rates.
Auto insurance also covers property and not life. Right.
Well, that's true, but it also provides in an extreme. I don't use my auto insurance except for in extreme situations. There are parallels. I mean, it's insurance. All insurance is the same in that you're essentially hedging against a catastrophic event. I don't know. I feel like
and that's I think that's broken. That's broken. You shouldn't treat healthcare as something that is something you avoid at all costs. I mean, if you need a doctor, you should be able to see a doctor.
Well, absolutely, I agree. But I think it would be cheaper to go see a doctor if I was directly the customer and not didn't have like third parties. There's such a disconnect between Americans and the cost for health insurance that I think it creates behaviors in the market that create the problems that we're facing. And I think if we corrected those market conditions, we could achieve a lot of the same outcomes we both want without necessarily having the government take over health insurance for everybody.
Yeah, and I think the incentive structure of healthcare is just too broken for that to happen. It's a completely different beast than anything else that we see. But that's just a disagreement. Yeah, it's okay.
It may not surprise you that I don't agree, but we can move on. And so let me ask you this though. So you're a Democrat. You're going to be running for office in North Dakota, which people talk all the time about North Dakota being a conservative place. I don't think North Dakotans are that conservative. I think North Dakotans are very populist. You look not that long ago, we had a Republican as governor, John Hoeven, currently our U.S. senator, winning elections with like 70% of the vote on the same ballot that like Kent Conrad or Byron Dorgan were winning 70% of the vote. I mean, so North Dakotans will vote for Democrats, and we have in the not so distant past, but we sure aren't doing a lot of it today. Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it has to do with the era we're in right now. People feel that the federal government has left them behind. And I think Trump did a really excellent job of talking to the working man, to be honest. And he really did bring that populist bent. And I agree with you completely that North Dakota does have that. And so you'll hear people across the nation and like the coastal areas say that, well, Trump won because of racism, sexism, xenophobia, et cetera. And I think that couldn't be farther from the truth, especially around here. He really talked about how we're getting screwed over by trade deals. The political and economic elite are bleeding our country dry. He said all those things, and that really hit home with a lot of people around here because they feel that the economy's left them behind.
Well, I agree with that entirely. I think that is the basis of Trump's appeal, and I think there's also even much more specific and pragmatic reasons. I mean, I look at, for instance, the 2020 field of Democratic presidential candidates, and every single one of them, and I've made this point over and over again, but I think it's just fascinating because every single Democratic candidate who's running for the White House has either said they're going to ban fracking or they're going to all but regulate it out of existence. If you did that, that turns off the oil industry in North Dakota. You turn off the oil industry in North Dakota, that's tens of thousands of jobs, both direct and indirect, that are lost. Mm-hmm. One out of every $2 over the last decade, and maybe the number needs to be updated, but about 50% of all revenue collected by the state of North Dakota is direct oil taxes paid by the oil and gas industry. It is an enormous amount of money. And so I don't think they understand. They would turn off our state's economy like a light bulb. And we could talk about North Dakota's economy should be more diversified. And I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I hope we can get there. We've been debating that for decades, certainly as long as I've been writing about politics. But the way the things sit now, the oil and gas industry is hugely important to North Dakota. And if you turn that off, we're going to go back to a state with a shrinking population, an aging population, and not enough money to really do anything in terms of investing in new businesses or money in the government to do creative things like our universities and everything else. So I hear that, and it's no wonder North Dakotans don't want to vote for Democrats. If they're saying that sort of thing, why would they vote for that?
I agree with you. I agree. And I think that from their perspective, and I don't think it's that smart, but I do think that, when how do I put this? You look at a state like North Dakota, it's a relatively small for primary and general as far as delegates and electoral votes. And so to some end, I think that they are vying for the climate change lane. And I do believe that is a huge issue that we face. But at the same time, you look at a state like North Dakota, for example. I agree with Kevin Kramer in the sense that fossil fuels keep the heat on. We had a polar vortex last year, negative 30 degrees, negative
we had a
polar
polar vortex not that long ago, and just this year. And I'll tell you, if you looked at, I mean, they put online where the mix of energy is coming from for certain dates through it's called MISO. I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for, but that's sort of our regional. When people talk about the power grid, that's what it is. And you can look at it, and I'll tell you, when it gets that cold, it ain't wind power that's keeping your furnace on. It is coal.
Did I lose you, Rob?
What's that?
Oh, sorry, I lost you for a bit there. Can you back up just a little bit?
Oh yeah, okay. So if you can look at the power grid, it's called MISO in our part of the world. And when we just had that, we just recently went through a point where we had negative 20, 25, negative 30 degree temperatures in North Dakota. It wasn't wind power, and it certainly wasn't solar power keeping the furnaces running. It was coal, it was natural gas, and it was nuclear power in our region, in MISO, which is not just North Dakota. It's sort of North Dakota, Minnesota, upper Midwest. But
right,
you can't look at that and say, oh, we should just keep building a bunch of windmills and that's just going to solve all their problems. Well, no, it won't. I mean, maybe there'll come a time in the future where it will, but right now, coal keeps the lights on. Natural gas keeps the lights on. Oil keeps the lights on.
That's I would say that as far as my view on the situation, yes, right now fossil fuels keep the lights on, keep the furnace on. And that's literally life or death for us up here. And so I think rather than taking this hardline stance that you see National Democrats taking as far as like shutting down fracking and stuff, we can make strides as far as reducing emissions while also not taking such extreme steps. I will be honest with you, and I'm not going to gain friends in the coal industry saying this, but I would be in favor of trying to get more of our energy from natural gas, more of our heat, and try to phase out coal, because coal is significantly more carbon impactful than natural gas is. And there needs to be obviously processes for any workers that are disaffected by transitioning our energy system like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, climate change is a real threat, and we have to make sure that we are tackling it in ways that we can, but we also have to be realistic about it.
I think that's exactly right. And just a rebuttal to your point, because the coal guys, I had Jason Borer from the Lignite Energy Council on the podcast, maybe a couple months ago. And he made a point, and he said, coal did. You have to look at the progress that we've made on coal too. Like at one point, like acid rain was an issue, and they largely fixed that. They figured out how to filter that out. Their argument is we could keep using coal. We have a ton of coal, and if carbon emissions are the problem, let's like we have Project Tundra going on here in North Dakota right now, where it's, hey, let's figure out how to capture more of this carbon and not emit it. I mean, do you think there's a future where we could use coal and it just doesn't have the impacts that it has today? Because certainly coal is far less impactful than it was even 20, 30 years ago. I mean, we've made progress and we can continue to make progress. And the coal guys are saying just don't, if we could get rid of some of the emissions problems, coal is cheap and coal is plentiful and it works.
Yeah, if we can invest in that kind of technology and it's practical, I would say, that's something that would definitely be a way to look.
How do you talk as a member of the Democratic Party? How do you live in Western North Dakota? You live in the same community I do, Minot. How do you talk to North Dakotans and convince them to vote for a Democrat? Because on the last in 2018. I think there was just one statewide Democratic candidate that got, and maybe I'm misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure there was just one candidate who got more than 30% of the vote. Hillary Clinton, the last presidential candidate, was down in the 20s. It's been tough rowing for the North Dakota Democratic Party. How do you connect to these voters and say, vote Democrat again?
Sure. So I'd say that, to quote Bill Clinton's campaign manager in the 90s, with a different word, obviously, it's the populism, stupid. And I think that that bringing that bent to the congressional race, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to tell my fellow Democrats that I'm going to beat Kelly Armstrong, but I will tell them that I am 100% confident that we will pull back and we will become closer at least. And I think that bringing that populism and saying that, talking about what we talked about at the beginning of the show about how big money has really corrupted the process in DC and how we need to get young and working people in there and representing the needs of working people. You also look at a large amount of libertarians in the area. And I describe myself as a part of the libertarian left, which means I'm a little more left on the economic issues like healthcare, college, etc.
A little more,
but
yeah. I mean, you want to naturalize the healthcare industry. So yes, you are squarely on the left.
Yes. So the rest of the issues, though, you look at drug policy, you look at social issues and freedom and all that stuff. I'm 100% behind that. And I think a lot of the people in this state would agree with that. And especially when it comes to stuff like foreign policy, we're spending trillions of dollars on wars abroad. We should be bringing that money home. We should be investing it in our infrastructure.
Which by the way, was in a lot of ways, and you could quibble about how he's executed it, but in a lot of ways, that was Trump's message too.
It was, yes. And he lied, but it was his message.
So let me it's kind of an odd strategy to say, well, I may not beat Kelly Armstrong, but I can at least make it closer.
That's just what I'm saying right now. I mean,
yeah.
You look at the last election, it was 30 points. I mean, that's a huge deficit to overcome. But at the same time, I think that a lot of the policies that I would bring forth that haven't been brought forth in this area yet would help claw us back from that time.
I think you make a really good point about the populism angle. And I don't, maybe you've read his book, but back when Byron Dorgan was still in office, he published a book. And it's going to drive Democrats nuts that I say this, but he published a book, and it was called Take This Job and Ship It. And it was about, sort of the blue, a lot of the things that President Trump talks about. And in fact, in a lot of ways, if you read that book, you could almost imagine that it's President Trump talking to you. Now, obviously, President Trump has his has a style that is very much not Byron Dorgan's style, but the message is the same. And that economic populism, I feel like in a lot of ways, the Democrats just lost their grip on it, and Republican, or Donald Trump specifically, Trumpism took it from them. And are you? Right. I mean, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you talking about going to back to that same sort of message?
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff that candidate Trump brought up is stuff that it's similar in the sense that, we do have a country that has been bled dry by a lot of really bad domestic policy, shipping our jobs overseas, a lot of really good manufacturing jobs. We've seen just the influx of big money and the economic elite that Trump talked about. I think that we should be clear that he lied. He's been about the establishment GOP's favorite president. If it weren't for the mean tweets, they would love him. But because he's a mean tweeter, all of a sudden they say he needs to cut that out. And other than that, they love the guy. And he's really, as a president, hasn't been the candidate Trump. And we can point that out while at the same time saying, well, hey, I don't disagree with a lot of what he said on the campaign trail. Let's actually do it.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes Democrats underestimate how much appeal President Trump has to a certain type of Democrat. Yesterday I had on the podcast a state senator from Grand Forks area district 18, Scott Meyer. And that district was considered to be deep blue. As a matter of fact, it's currently Cory Mock's district, a former leadership in the Democratic caucus in the legislature, was in District 42, moved to District 18. But before that, it was Elliot Glassheim's district. It was Connie Triplett's district. I mean, these are probably some of the most left. I'm not saying this pejoratively, but I mean, they were definitely left-wing leaders, and yet in the Trump wave, Republicans took those districts. Republicans took over District 42. The chairman of your party, Kylie Overson, was booted out of office in 2016. She lost her election. So, that doesn't happen in those Democratic districts with a lot of people who in the past voted for Democrats turning and voting for Republicans. And it's widely conceded that was part of the Trump wave, that there was a certain type of Democrat that just Trump was just the right thing for them. And I think a lot of people in your party overlook that. They're so busy hating Trump that they forget about the appeal that Trump has to a certain type of Democrat.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that what he brought as far as the bravado and the just the way he spoke very bluntly, I think he kind of opened up a new era. And I will tell you, if President Trump hadn't been elected, I don't think I would be here today. I think he really kind of changed the rule book in politics and kind of allowed different voices to start kind of making their case, even though they don't have the standard qualifications that you would think in the past for politics. They're jumping in now, and I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'm going to say, we gotta get a government that works for the people and not for special interests, and actually invest in working people and make sure that we make America great again, as they say.
I feel like I should have started the interview with this, but I'm going to do it now. Give us a little bit about your biography. Who are you? Where'd you grow up? What's your education like? What's your work experience like?
Sure. So I grew up in the small town of Northwood, North Dakota. It's southwest of Grand Forks, 1,000 people. I guess I graduated. I went to UND, graduated from there, and then I started my career in Minot in 2016, and we got involved with the Dem MPL from there. I'm 26 years old, so just I'm pretty young right now, but I have been passionate about these issues for some time now. And just with some personal stuff in life, my mom battled cancer twice and beat it. And I just, especially with healthcare, just thinking about if she hadn't met my dad and didn't have stable federal government insurance through his employer, things could have been a whole lot different. And she could have not went to the doctor when she first had signs and then ended up being stage 4 instead of stage 2. And those things break my heart to think that it happens across the country. And so that's the reason I'm passionate about that issue. And a lot of it had to do with the primary campaigns of both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. I think they both brought that populism to the forefront and both called out the American economy, saying that it's not working and that we need to make it work. And so that's where my passion derived from.
I am glad that your mom is okay today. That's what I'm taking. I'm very happy to hear that. And I want to. That's the outcome that both you and I want to achieve: is people being able to access the care that they want or the care that they need, and get it delivered competently in an efficient manner. I think we just have very different ideas on how to get there, but I do think we both agree the status quo sucks. And we could be doing a lot better. So we just have from there we diverge, but then end up back at the same place, which is what we all want to achieve. Zach, thanks for making time for me today. Anything else? Tell me, people who are interested in they want to follow your campaign, maybe they want to donate some money. How do they do that?
Sure. So my website is www.zach4nd.com. It's got like 4 or 5 different spellings, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Zach4nd.com is where you'll find my website, and then from there, there's links to social media, donations, and all that.
Okay.
We're taking just individual contributions, no corporate PAC money. So $5, $3, $1, it all makes a difference for us. So appreciate any and all support.
All right. Well, Zach, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.